The United States, officially the United States of America, is a country in North America, a federal republic of 50 states. Besides the 48 conterminous states that occupy the middle latitudes of the continent, the United States includes the state of Alaska, at the northwestern extreme of North America, and the island state of Hawaii in the mid-Pacific Ocean. The conterminous states are bounded on the north by Canada, on the east by the Atlantic Ocean, on the south by the Gulf of Mexico and Mexico, and on the west by the Pacific Ocean. The United States is the fourth largest country in the world in area, after Russia, Canada, and China. The national capital is Washington, which is coextensive with the District of Columbia, the federal capital region created in 1790. The major characteristic of the United States is probably its great variety. Its physical environment ranges from the Arctic to the subtropical, from the moist rain forest to the arid desert, from the rugged mountain peak to the flat prairie. Although the total population of the United States is large by world standards, its overall population density is relatively low. The United States contains a highly diverse population. Unlike a country such as China, which largely incorporated indigenous peoples, the United States has a diversity that to a great degree has come from an immense and sustained global immigration. Probably no other country has a wider range of racial, ethnic, and cultural types than the United States. The United States is the world's greatest economic power, measured in terms of gross domestic product. The nation's wealth is partly a reflection of its rich natural resources and its enormous agricultural output, but it owes more to the country's highly developed industry. Despite its relative economic self-sufficiency in many areas, the United States is the most important single factor in world trade by virtue of the sheer size of its economy. The two great sets of elements that mold the physical environment of the United States are the geologic, which determines the main patterns of landforms, drainage, and mineral resources and influences soils to a lesser degree, and, second, the atmospheric, which dictates not only climate and weather but also in large part the distribution of soils, plants, and animals. Although these elements are not entirely independent of one another, each produces on-map patterns that are so profoundly different that essentially they remain two separate geographies. The center of the conterminous United States is a great sprawling interior lowland, reaching from the ancient shield of central Canada on the north to the Gulf of Mexico on the south. To east and west, this lowland rises, first gradually and then abruptly, to mountain ranges that divide it from the sea on both sides. The Appalachian Mountains on the east are low, almost unbroken, and in the main set well back from the Atlantic. From New York to the Mexican border stretches the low coastal plain, which faces the ocean along a swampy, convoluted coast. The gently sloping surface of the plain extends out beneath the sea, where it forms the continental shelf, which although submerged beneath shallow ocean water, is geologically identical to the coastal plain. As befits a nation of continental proportions, the United States has an extraordinary network of rivers and lakes, including some of the largest and most useful in the world. In the humid east, they provide an enormous mileage of cheap inland transportation. Westward, most rivers and streams are unnavigable but are heavily used for irrigation and power generation. Both east and west traditionally have used lakes and streams as public sewers, and despite efforts to clean them up, most large waterways are laden with vast, poisonous volumes of industrial, agricultural, and human wastes. Climate affects human habitats both directly and indirectly through its influence on vegetation, soils, and wildlife. In the United States, however, the natural environment has been altered drastically by nearly 4 centuries of European settlement, as well as thousands of years of Indian occupancy. Wherever land is abandoned, wild conditions return rapidly, achieving over the long run a dynamic equilibrium among soils, vegetation, and the inexorable strictures of climate. Though Americans have created an artificial environment of continental proportions, the United States still can be divided into a mosaic of bioclimatic regions, each of them distinguished by peculiar climatic conditions and each with potential vegetation and soil that eventually would return in the absence of humans. The main exception to this generalization applies to fauna, so drastically altered that it is almost impossible to know what sort of animal geography would redevelop in the areas of the United States if humans were removed from the scene. Most of the United States is marked by sharp differences between winter and summer. In winter, when temperature contrasts between land and water are greatest, huge masses of frigid, dry Canadian air periodically spread far south over the mid-continent, bringing cold, sparkling weather to the interior, and generating great cyclonic storms where their leading edges confront the shrunken mass of warm Gulf air to the south. The winter climate on the west coast is very different. A great spiraling mass of relatively warm, moist air spreads south from the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, its semi-permanent front producing gloomy overcast and drizzles that hang over the Pacific Northwest all winter long. During the summer there is a reversal of the air masses, and east of the Rockies the change resembles the summer monsoon of Southeast Asia. As the mid-continent heats up, the cold Canadian air mass weakens and retreats, pushed north by an aggressive mass of warm, moist air from the Gulf. Heat and humidity are naturally most oppressive in the south, but there is little comfort in the more northern latitudes. Over most of the United States, as in most continental climates, spring and autumn are agreeable but disappointingly brief. The dominant features of the vegetation are indicated by the terms forest, grassland, desert, and alpine tundra. A coniferous forest of white and red pine, hemlock, spruce, jack pine, and balsam fir extends interruptedly in a narrow strip near the Canadian border from Maine to Minnesota, and southward along the Appalachian Mountains. Forest with varying mixtures of maple, oak, ash, locust, linden, sweet gum, walnut, hickory, sycamore, beech, and the more southerly tulip tree, once extended uninterruptedly from New England to Missouri and eastern Texas. The grasslands occur principally in the Great Plains area and extend westward into the intermontane basins and benchlands of the Rocky Mountains. The alpine tundra, located in the conterminous United States only in the mountains above the limit of trees, consists principally of small plants that bloom brilliantly for a short season. Sagebrush is the most common plant of the arid basins and semideserts west of the Rocky Mountains, but juniper, nut pine, and mountain mahogany are often found on the slopes and low ridges. The desert, extending from southeastern California to Texas, is noted for the many species of cactus, some of which grow to the height of trees. The animal geography of the United States is far from a natural pattern. Initially, numerous species faced extinction or came dangerously close to it, with the American bison serving as a prominent example, currently residing primarily within zoos and wildlife preserves, scarcely found in the wild. Second, habitats were upset or destroyed throughout most of the country, forests cut, grasslands plowed and overgrazed, and migration paths interrupted by fences, railroads, and highways. Furthermore, the prolonged and extensive usage of chemical biocides like DDT, whose complete implications are yet to be comprehended, is thought to be partially accountable for the devastatingly high mortality rates observed in large mammals and birds, particularly those occupying upper positions in the food chain. Finally, it is worth noting that certain insects, birds, and mammals from tropical and subtropical regions have been undergoing a gradual movement toward northern areas, potentially facilitated by the gradual warming of the climate. In consequence, many native animals have been reduced to tiny fractions of their former ranges or exterminated completely, while other animals, both native and introduced, have found the new anthropocentric environment well suited to their needs, with explosive effects on their populations. The coyote, opossum, armadillo, and various deer species are examples of animals that have expanded their habitats significantly, now occupying much larger territories compared to their previous ranges. A multitude of significant animal species have extended their presence far beyond the boundaries of specific regions or zones, encompassing extensive areas across the continent. Examples of these widely distributed animals include the white-tailed deer and black bear, the puma and bobcat, the river otter and mink, and the beaver and muskrat. The distinctively adaptable coyote can be found across western North America and extends its range as far eastward as Maine. In contrast, the snapping turtle inhabits areas ranging from the Atlantic coast to the Rocky Mountains. Most distinctive of the grassland animals proper is the American bison, whose nearly extinct European relative, the wisent, is a forest dweller. The southwestern deserts offer a haven for reptiles, with an abundance of unique lizard species such as the venomous Gila monster. Additionally, rattlesnakes, some of which are exclusive to the region, are commonly found there. These desert-dwelling reptiles frequently extend their habitats to the Pacific coast and venture northward into the Great Basin. In the span of approximately a century, American rural life has experienced a greater degree of transformation compared to the preceding 3 centuries of European settlement in North America. While this profound shift can be attributed to sweeping social and technological changes occurring worldwide, the primary catalyst for immediate change has been the internal combustion engine. The advent of automobiles, trucks, buses, and paved highways has surpassed the declining passenger and freight railroad system, becoming the dominant means of transportation. Amidst the closure of numerous local rail depots and the abandonment of countless secondary railroad lines, a remarkable transformation has taken place. Extensive efforts have been made to pave hundreds of thousands of miles of previously unpaved dirt roads, alongside the construction of an expansive interstate highway system that seamlessly links major cities. Consequently, travel times have significantly decreased, and individual drivers, whether residing in rural or urban areas, now cover greater distances. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe.